How do I stop resenting my wife for no sex? Welcome back to the Secure Husband Podcast. Bruce Abbott, certified professional coach and founder of SecureHusband.com, the podcast where I help good men get unstuck. There's a common theme that I see in all of my coaching clients, and that is growing resentment over lack of sex, affection, intimacy. And it appears in almost every conversation that I have with my guys. If you are in a sexless marriage or a marriage where sex feels disconnected, maybe transactional, you've probably said, hey, okay, what's wrong with me? Does she not love me anymore? Am I too needy? Has she just stopped caring? Am I attractive enough? Am I desirable? Then the resentment creeps in. You start to feel angry. You don't want to be, but you feel rejected. You're trying not to take it personally, but you're starting to go numb. You want connection. This resentment is a signal. It's telling you something. I carried resentment for years before I started to heal it from the inside out. And it helped me move from wounded and bitter to grounded and at peace. I had this with my wife. We've been married for over 20 years. And the story that I told myself, the narrative was, I know she loves me, but it feels like she has no desire for me at all. I tried to stay patient. I tried being romantic. I tried being helpful, folding the laundry, doing the dishes, getting the kids taken care of. None of it led to closeness. None of it led to intimacy. None of it certainly led to sex. And then I was beginning to seethe inside. I was beginning to feel so resentful. And I got to a point where I realized I was becoming very bitter. And the thoughts that would go through my head, hey, you know what? She wouldn't care if I just disappeared. She only wants me because I'm the parent of the kids. And that was my state of mind for years. Now, I still loved my wife. I was still committed to my marriage, but I was dying inside. And that's where I finally started this healing process, this long journey. It was a messy journey for me. As I started to put this together for my coaching clients, I ended up taking what was essentially a 20-year journey, compacting it into this process. And that's how I came up with the Secure Husband process. And the first step in all of this is always noticing. It's this curiosity. It's an intention to be aware of what's happening, to learn what's happening, to be realistic in the circumstances, just open my eyes and just notice. And so as I started down this journey, my first step of noticing was just asking myself, okay, what does it feel like when I think about the lack of affection or lack of sex, intimacy? And I named that feeling: lonely, rejected, feeling I'm not good enough as a husband. Resentment wasn't really the root. It was just a symptom. It was something deeper. It was shame. It was disconnection. It was grief. It was feeling unwanted, unworthy, unchosen. See, if we don't process these emotions honestly, they will just fester into resentment. Resentment, it's grief without expression. What I started doing is I started noticing. Not noticing her behaviors, but noticing my pain and leaning into it. So every time that the thought, she doesn't want me, would pop up in my head, I would stop myself and say, okay, you're telling yourself stories. What emotions am I feeling right now? Okay, is there a memory that this reminded me of? What fear, because this is all really based on fear, what fear is sitting underneath all of this? And after a while, I saw a pattern. I don't feel worthy as a husband. I feel invisible. The longer I go without being touched, the more I start to believe I don't matter. So that goes beyond just sexual frustration. That's emotional abandonment. I was self-abandoning. And once I noticed that, then I had a choice. I could choose to continue going down the same path that I'd gone for years, or I could take a different path. And so I chose to stop abandoning myself. By doing this, I had to learn how to be connected to that part of me inside that felt rejected, but without shame. I had to connect with love and compassion, self-love. This all ate away at my self-worth. I didn't quite realize that, But that was what was driving the show, was this lack of self-worth, this lack of self-esteem. And so when the thought comes up of, if she doesn't want me, it must be me, I had internalized that rejection personally. So I tried harder. I did more chores. I tried more compliments. I tried being the better husband, being perfect. A lot of self-blame would come into the picture when things didn't fix. So I thought, well, maybe I just fix myself. Then she'll want me again. That mindset is what keeps men stuck. It's what kept me stuck for years, because it puts value in your wife's hands. I had to change that mindset and embrace the truth. Her sexual availability does not determine my worth. I had to really let that sink in. Her sexual availability doesn't determine my worth. Her libido, her defenses, her wounds, they're hers. I can't control them. I didn't cause them. I can't fix them. So what did I do? I stopped abandoning myself in the name of earning love. So I just started sitting with this pain. I didn't try to fix it. I didn't try to hide it. I didn't try to stuff it. I didn't try to numb it like I had been previously with alcohol. I just held it like a father would hold his son. If you had a son who was wounded, a good father, he would hold him with compassion and love. I'd never really been taught how to do that with myself, to be able to hold myself, be a father to myself, love myself. But now I started to choose decisions that were loving to me. That's where change began happening. And it's in that process that I learned how to meet that little boy inside of me, that inner child, my subconscious, my deep feelings. But it's really that little boy who, at only just a few years old, learned that if I perform, I get love, and if I don't, I get silence. Because this is where you start to realize that there's a younger part of you who believed rejection meant failure. When I work with my clients, I give them visualization homework where you picture yourself at a young age, 7 years old, sitting on the edge of your bed, crying after being humiliated by an angry parent, maybe feeling invisible at home. Whatever that story is for you, you just sit with that little boy and you give him love and you give him compassion and you tell him, I'm here for you. I love you. You don't have to earn my love. That's where you learn that love for yourself is unconditional. And this is also where you connect to a spiritual guidance, your higher power, that divine wisdom, where you get the truth. You can have a dialogue, whatever your belief is. You can say, God, am I worthy? Yes, you are worthy. And you have deep conversations. You find out what inherent worth is all about. You learn what unconditional love is. So now, when you become older and your wife stops being intimate, when that little boy is lit up with fear and he's saying to himself, I failed again, I'm not lovable again, I'm not enough, because that little boy doesn't need more sex. He needs to feel safe and seen and chosen by you. And so when you learn to reparent yourself, when you were able to sit there with self-compassion for that little boy inside of you, that's where healing begins. And that's what I challenge you to do as well. Sit down in a quiet space. Dialogue with your higher power. Dialogue with that little boy inside of you. Listen to what he says, because he's going to tell you a whole lot of information. And you look at that little boy and tell him you don't have to earn love anymore. You're already enough. And in that moment, you take the first steps towards dissolving resentment, because now that wound that was being held, you're not shoving it down anymore. You're embracing it with love. That's how you begin to heal. And it's through this process where you have dialogue with your spiritual guidance, you get clarity on what your next action will be. What is loving action? Loving to myself and others. Loving with truth and authenticity. What is my next action to take that's aligned with who I want to be? Maybe it's understanding her story without making excuses for her behavior. See, this is where I think a lot of guys become doormats or they become distant and cold. But there's another option, and it's through secure leadership. So you start to see your wife and her own defenses and her trauma and her wounds. Her lack of desire is not necessarily about me. Her refusal to address it, talk about it, or work on it, that can be painful for men. And that can really spur the rejection. So you approach it with radical acceptance. You understand that story. You make space for both truths, compassion for her wounds, clarity about your own needs. This is where you stop trying to fix her. You stop blaming her. You stop begging. You start leading. This is where you start to say things like, babe, I love you, but I'm hurting, and I can't keep pretending I'm fine. I'm not here to pressure you, but I also won't keep hiding the truth about what I need. There's nothing manipulative in that statement right there. That is truthful, honest, authentic. That's mature. And that energy often changes the emotional tone of the relationship. It can bring dignity back to a man who's lost himself. Does that mean intimacy will return? It may not in this relationship. And so you repeat the process and take full responsibility for your needs without shame, without blaming her, without feeling guilty. You take full ownership of your desire. We carry shame around wanting sex, and that leads us to feeling needy and pathetic. But the truth is, healthy men want sex. Healthy men want connection. Healthy men want to feel chosen. That's not weak. It's human. And you reframe that need. No, it's not a demand. It's not a weapon. It's not just about men getting off. It's about being touched, known, received, connected. Once you stop feeling guilty for wanting sex, you start talking about it with calm strength and not desperation. And you begin to own, this is what I need. I'm not going to shame myself for it. I'm not going to shame you either, but this is part of who I am. That's how you start to dissolve resentment, because that'll change everything. Because now you can stand in truth and not resentment. And no matter what the outcome is, I always say the outcome's going to be what the outcome's going to be. But whatever that outcome is, you become a man who stays grounded no matter what. You become a man who doesn't let her avoidance define your worth. So then the resentment fades, not because the sex returned, but because you are returning to yourself. You're not abandoning yourself anymore. So you start feeling these emotions instead of avoiding them and stuffing them. You start speaking your truth. You're parenting that inner boy instead of expecting your wife to heal him. You lead from security instead of chasing approval. And in many cases, intimacy, it begins to come back. Not because you earned it, but because the pressure was gone and the presence had replaced it. And you were only able to be present by eliminating the resentment. Your peace no longer depends on her desire. You can reclaim your integrity. As you reclaim your integrity and become more secure, you start asking yourself more questions. You repeat the process where you notice and make choices, and you dialogue with your higher power and that inner boy, and you do a loving, aligned action. That may mean leaving the relationship. It may mean staying, working through it, and the relationship heals. The outcome is what the outcome is. This is about stopping the resentment. How do I stop resenting my wife for no sex? The answer is not found in trying harder. It's found in telling the truth about your pain, about your story, about your value, about what you need, and then leading from that truth. Not anger, not shame, not silence. You're not bad for wanting connection. You will stay stuck if you keep abandoning yourself for it, but you can become the man who speaks with clarity, who leads with empathy and chooses integrity over resentment. That's becoming a secure husband. I hope this podcast was helpful for you. Would you please give me a review? That helps other men find this podcast to heal. If you're not subscribing already, please do so. And if you need help getting unstuck, that accountability, visit securehusband.com. Set up a free 30-minute consultation with me. No pressure, just a conversation to see if I can help you. And I'll see you again on the next Secure Husband podcast. Thanks for listening.